So basically trading the electrons that your solar is producing every day to move them to the most valuable activities you can do for your bill and for the grid at the same time. And that's the secret sauce, is we're taking advantage of the capabilities that are already there while building the trust with the utility that can say like, oh, great, you can do, items 2, 3, 4, and 5 with this battery, as this piece of technology on your roof, convert energy from the sun, and in a distributed network, in a civilization where we all care enough to do so, you are spreading that energy to your neighbors, to your community, to power their lives, to power their home. We need a complete societal transformation of our relationship to energy. Hawaii absolutely could, should, and probably will be the first state to go 100% renewable.
I'm Sean Lopez, and this is the Buoy Report. I sell solar panels and batteries for a living, and I surf big waves for fun. It all comes from the sun. Sometimes I make it, sometimes I don't. Follow along as I help the world accelerate the adoption of renewable energy and sustainable living. Aloha. Hey, aloha everybody. How you doing today? I just had the most interesting conversation with a friend of mine that I want to share with you guys. His name is Steve Wheat. He is the Director of Program Management for Swell Energy. Swell Energy is a grid services company. Grid services is a product for the utility and its clients that provides a solution for renewable energy integration. This conversation is one part tutorial for myself to learn more about the product and program they're introducing here in Hawaii and how it could benefit my clients. And the other part, just to give as much information on what this program is and share it with you guys. So I hope you enjoy it. There's a bunch of nitty gritty information in there, and I definitely learned a lot. I hope you do too. I hope you enjoy it. If you enjoy this, please hit like, hit subscribe. Don't be shy. Shoot me an email if you have any questions. Love to learn about you guys as well that are paying attention to this stuff, and hope you enjoy. Aloha. There we go, and we're off and live. So, aloha, Steve. How you doing? Thank you for taking the time to chat with me. Little brief introduction. I have Steve Wheat talking with me today. He's calling in from San Francisco, correct? And
The Bay Area, yeah.
Bay Area, okay. And he is the Director of Grid Services Program Management at Swell Energy. So we got a bunch of really cool stuff going on with Steve and Swell out here in Hawaii. And this is one part tutorial for myself and my little sales speech, and one part I wanted to share to Hawaii and the world what we got going on out here in Hawaii. And it's pretty exciting news in the world of renewable energy and grid services and all that stuff. So brief introduction to yourself. What brought you to this place today, talking with me, and what's been your professional path that got you here into the chair you're sitting in today?
Let me try and give a really brief overview of a few different lives. So I got my start in finance when I was young and impressionable, since I grew up outside of New York City. That didn't work out for a variety of reasons, just wasn't working for me. And when I left college, I became an English teacher and traveled around the world doing that for quite some time. So I spent a year in Japan, 2 years in China, a year in the Sultanate of Oman, 2 years in Saudi Arabia. And then after kind of seeing so much of the world and so many of these beautiful places, wanted to settle into something that I truly cared about and was meaningful to me. So I spent almost a year down in Latin America volunteering with different NGOs and solar startups through Peru and Bolivia, and then came into the renewable world here in the States. I started kind of at the lowest rung. Learned all about how it's sold, how customers go through their processes, helped lead a team that did solar operations, so just how all the paperwork gets done for these really complicated products, and then got into grid services, back in 2017 for one company, which is when you combine a whole bunch of solar systems and batteries together. And then kept it up to moved over to Swell, which is where I am now, doing really exciting grid edge contracts and leading a team of folks who are managing these types of programs around the country.
Very rad. You touched on something. You did a bit, I guess, from what I heard through the grapevine and LinkedIn, I guess you did a little bit of energy trading for a little bit in the New York. Is that correct?
Nope. I worked for a really standard money marketing company, and then HSBC asset management for a little while after that.
So the finance side of things you kind of came from.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, sorry. Thank you for that correction. It's going to get pretty technical for a little bit, so maybe we start off with a couple quick terminology definitions, then we can kind of get into the nitty gritty of it. So what is DER, distributed energy systems, and kind of what does it mean to you?
Yeah, I guess it's pretty easy to start with what they aren't, and what they're compared to, and get to them. So basically, for 100 years, utilities are what we all think of them as, which are really big power plants we call central generating stations. So we build a big power plant, we attach a bunch of wires to it going out in every direction and to substations, and the power only goes one way. It's created at a power plant and it goes out to our homes. So that's the idea of centralized power. There's a central position. It is in one place. It sends power outward from that location. So distributed energy resources are the opposite. They are places where you can generate electricity that are scattered kind of all over the energy grid. And since these are on homes or on businesses, they're also using energy. So you started producing energy and sometimes taking energy from the same location. And it's just there are little pieces all over the grid instead of these enormous power plants in one location.
Okay, that makes sense. And what is grid services and how does that connect?
Yeah, so a simple definition is that when you take these distributed resources, often they're acting at random because they're based on the energy that you use or produce in your own home or your own business or your own car that you're plugging in. When you connect those resources together, and then you use them in purpose at the same time, you create a resource that the grid can call on or use to solve problems in the same way as a power plant. So if you have one car that you plug in randomly every day, it's useful for you. If you have 1,000, or if you have 1,000 solar systems or 1,000 batteries, and they're all charging energy at the same time or sending energy back at the same time, it looks more like something that helps to balance the grid. It's a really functional grid asset.
Gotcha. And that leads to kind of like the third one is VPPs, virtual power plants. What is that?
Yeah. So a virtual power plant is kind of a wonky industry term to describe putting together these resources to deliver grid services. So grid services are delivered from a virtual power plant, right? Because it's not a big multi-billion-dollar facility that we build. It's using software to connect a lot of little facilities to act as if they were a power plant by acting at the same time. A virtual power plant is, it's an orchestra instead of a car horn.
Yeah, that's quite cool. One of the key concepts that really attracted me to all this is the decentralized, and we'll get to Swell what it means. It's kind of a what would you call it? A popular term for the sake of a simple word, decentralized, right? And whether it's in this blockchain, and basically there's, instead of everything being centralized, there's many voices coming in and spreading out the power. And that spreading out the power can be a theory that can be basically applied to a bunch of different fields, but it's in the energy world and in the grid, was it the utility finally capitulated that like they need this, right? And this is where we're going. So this is where Swell comes in. I guess first start with what is Swell and where are they and what do they do in all those terms, and how does it connect all those terms together to the utility?
Yeah. So a little bit of self promotion on the company I work for, Swell Energy. They are an energy startup.
Yeah.
So they've been around about 10 years now, I think. And they started mainly as a company that in California was able to go to customers that had existing solar systems and add battery to those systems, which a lot of companies weren't doing at the time. And they found a lot of success doing that. And then they added a bunch of other things that they did. So they started procuring a lot of money from investors, tax equity investors, to provide financing to deploy systems similar to large solar companies around the country today. And then they also saw that they could take these batteries that they were deploying and connect them and win grid services contracts. So that became a large part of their business as well. So Swell Energy is kind of it's a small but mighty energy company that is a one-stop shop for everything we need for small scale change of the grid. And that is to deploy a lot of renewables, to connect those renewables with really sophisticated data science and algorithms and software, and then deliver services from those renewables that actually generate a lot of money for you as just someone with a home and with a system on it that can connect to these types of programs. And we can finance down the cost of that in the course of doing those activities as well.
Very interesting. With the home battery, basically there's grid services discreetly, right? And there's the AI that has to make decisions on the fly really quickly. Where in, I guess, define what grid services discreetly is and what that means, and like that rapid fire, what was the word you used there? Like rapid, fast frequency response.
Yeah. So I guess let's talk about this technology a little bit, because I think, well, let's just say like what we think of as a battery, right? Like a Tesla Powerwall or one of the other types of batteries that you connect to a home solar system. It's not a Duracell. It's not something that just soaks up energy and gives it back. It's actually a really sophisticated piece of hardware. It's more like your iPhone.
Yep.
But because of the way the energy system works, there has to be trust that you can install more apps, let's say, right? So your battery is like, to start to mix metaphors, but like like a Swiss Army knife.
Yep.
And you can pull out all kinds of different capabilities, up to 10, 11, 12, 13 different things that just your home solar and battery system can do to help balance the grid. And every time that you use a battery and your inverter and your solar system to do one of these activities, you have to give up something. You're not doing something else. So if all you're doing every day is using your battery as a Duracell, you soak up energy when it's cheap and you give back energy when it's expensive, you'll start saving money. But when you start adding all of these other functions on top of it, these grid services functions, all of a sudden now this thing is generating revenue for you as a customer. It is helping to balance the grid in your neighborhood, and it's helping us to justify decarbonizing the grid. So all of those things kind of synchronize together. What Swell does is, the secret sauce is we have a really, really good team of data scientists who can look at what are you doing every day for your home? What are the needs of a grid services contract? And we can balance using your battery for a bunch of different activities simultaneously. So basically trading the electrons that your solar is producing every day to move them to the most valuable activities you can do for your bill and for the grid at the same time. And that's the secret sauce, is we're taking advantage of the capabilities that are already there while building the trust with the utility that can say like, oh, great, you can do, items 2, 3, 4, and 5 with this battery, as well as just doing your savings. And that's really what puts Swell kind of apart right now, is that we've gotten to the point where we can balance these for a homeowner much faster than you could possibly do as like just a single person looking at an app or something like that.
So balancing it, right? So when somebody's fallen short, let's say you're at the end of the road and your neighbor's hammering the arc welder at the middle of the day and just put in a massive draw. Is that that where you're anticipating what your neighbor's doing. You're saying, so you got a full battery, grids, the sun's shining, the grid can't get there quick enough, but your battery can get there quicker. Is that kind of, am I thinking about that correctly?
Yeah, in some cases it's similar. You really got to think about it in terms of like the network effect of a large group. And in Hawaii, it's really easy to think about, right? Because it's an entire island.
Yes.
So if there are, if you look at the weather on the entire island, you can predict like, oh, a lot of people are going to turn their air conditioning on, or a lot of, or there's not going to be a lot of sun today, or there's three major businesses that shut down really off the grid at the same time, and there needs to be a balance. So not necessarily what any one person is doing, but if there is something happening to an entire network of people, you can solve that by activating, hundreds of thousands of systems at the same time.
But is that like the AI capability of it, where you're taking historical data, and the more data and the more it kind of plugs into it, the better, and you can do the predictability of it?
So there is the partnership is between an aggregator, which is what we call a company that takes all of these systems and put them together, like Swell, and the utility operator. Because even though the utility model is pretty old, they have to be pretty sophisticated in how they balance the grid, because the grid has to be balanced in real time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So the better Swell can get at saying like, oh, when we have 5,000 customers and we know it's going to be this sunny or this cloudy, we know how much energy is going to be in those batteries if you need it. So if you call on us, we can deliver that energy, like, right, it's on demand energy delivery. And that's really valuable for managing a utility grid. And that's part of, it's just a partnership between the company that's running a virtual power plant or running a grid service, and the utility that needs to manage the grid for reliable energy delivery to everybody who's connected.
And on demand means like less than a second. You got to provide that faster than them with on point precision, right? Like that's pretty hefty bet of your predictability, right?
That's
precision,
where
precision predictability.
That's what we're hoping to get to. In this program in Hawaii, we have a few hours notice for a couple of the grid services, and one of them is actually an automatic service that's going to happen very, very quickly.
So is there any downside you guys are responsible for as well, like when it comes to all this?
Yeah, of course. These are like, we are putting a lot of skin in the game, right? Because the goal of a utility is they have to guarantee that energy and electricity is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yes. So if we in the renewables world, if we in the solar world, in the the EV world, the battery world, if we want to go and tell utilities that we can replace the aging fossil fuel infrastructure that you have, we have to be able to do exactly what those resources are doing. And in a lot of cases, we have to do it better. So yeah, there is a lot of downside risk when we engage in saying that we're gonna provide tens of megawatts of capacity. We have to show up. We have to be there. We have to perform, or these resources won't be trusted to do those same activities, and we'll be stuck with fossil fuels for a lot longer.
Interesting. So let's kind of pivot into Hawaii. So you guys won a contract. It was a 60 megawatt contract. What's do you know the overall size of Hawaii's grid off the top of your head? I should have researched that.
Yeah, no, sorry, I don't. I know that I believe Maui is a couple hundred megawatts.
Okay.
I think the Big Island is somewhere on par with that, and Oahu is some gigawatts.
Okay. But the contract you got was essentially for 6,000 meters, more or less, two battery meters.
Yeah, so we signed a contract to deliver 60 megawatts of nameplate capacity. Capacity is just the size of the energy storage that we're delivering, and it ends up being 80 megawatts of grid services, since we're doing 3 grid services with each customer. So we're actually stacking a number of grid services for each of the customers that sign up. And if you look at the average customer around Hawaii, we're estimating that with a customer with 2 batteries being the average, it comes out to about 6,000 people that are all going to be connected together to deliver these grid services.
Okay. And how does the payments go out to these customers? I've added, this is a little tutorial for myself for my own sales pitch. I have a slide in my deck when I talk to my clients, and majority of my clients are new construction, 2 to 4 to 6 batteries, which ends up being about 10 to 20 kW is kind of my cup of tea. And one of these, it's Swell. Enrolling in the Swell program is a very positive aspect of getting more batteries, because you get a little added revenue stream. It's very much my pitch. So can you speak to how much revenue you guys can get for the customers, and the upside to that?
Yeah, so it's just a really customer friendly program in the way it was designed. And even working in renewables, I don't mind giving kudos to the utility at all, because they actually helped design a program that was going to make sure that payments flowed to customers. And so the way it works is that once you join the program, you become 1/6,000th of this power plant, right, of this grid service. So we analyze your system individually, and we figure out how much capacity, how much capability to deliver does your home have, and you will receive that payment every single month. And so you get paid as if you're a part of a power plant, and you never get penalized for your performance. The payment is delivered automatically on your electric bill as soon as you enroll. So if you enroll on a Tuesday and you happen to get your next bill on a Wednesday, you'll see the incentive payment for joining the program right on your bill. It's the only thing in Hawaii that I know of right now that can actually take your bill down to $0.
Yeah.
And if the incentive that you receive from the program is greater than the size of your bill, you'll get a check from the utility every month for the excess.
They finally are cutting checks back. That is,
so you may finally have a reason to look forward to snail mail again. Sending you a check.
Mailbox money, we call that out here. So like, just for clarification for people listening, the minimum hookup charge in Hawaii is anywhere from between 17 to 27. I've seen it variable, and I've talked with my friend that I've gone to since elementary school that is a MECO account rep, and I'm trying to understand their pricing algorithm, and there's definitely very complicated. But the minimum, if you're exporting some amount of power and you're using it and you're using all your energy wisely, and basically to say you get your bill down to 0 is actually getting it down to 24 or 27. It's like this minimum hookup charge fee. So with your guys' program, you can actually zero that out as well. So get it to 0 and actually have money going towards that. So that's very cool. So, why did you guys choose Hawaii, and how did you guys win that contract? I'm sure there was a lot of back and forth with the PUC and dealing with that utility. I've been selling solar here in Hawaii for 15 years, and it's long enough to make me believe in conspiracy theories. Some of the shenanigans I've seen, the utility and tax credits. Renewable energy is a dynamic industry in and of itself. It's finance, it's public policy, it's climate change, it's dealing with utilities and monopolies, and the HECO out here is a publicly traded company. So every solar system I sell is one less revenue stream that they're getting. So I know they're not motivated to try and get this. So how was it, did you guys get this program and get them to capitulate that they needed virtual power plants?
Yeah, I have to say, Swell had won this program before I joined the company.
Okay.
I wasn't part of the bidding process, but this was actually it's the result of a grid services purchase agreement. It's the second of 3 that the utility put out. But in general, there's all kinds of ways that programs like these come into existence. In some cases, there is a mandate. So it could be a national government mandate. It could be a state government mandate that says you as a utility have to procure so many renewables or reach a renewable goal over a certain number of years. And that comes down to, programs like these to replace existing capacity needs. Sometimes it can be like it is happening on Oahu right now. It could be that an old piece of fossil fuel infrastructure simply reaches the end of its life. And that's the good thing about the rules of the road as they're written. They favor whoever is the most cost effective. And so as long as we as an industry, as a renewable industry, can keep driving down our costs and be efficient, we can just win on price over the old fossil fuel incumbents. And that's playing directly into the rules that were laid down, decades ago before we were even considered a viable option.
That's where the market speaks, right? And the market is asking for this, and that levelized cost of energy is on its way down.
Yeah, and just like the way that the energy system is structured, we spend a lot of money building in backup power, basically. Sometimes it's called the N-2 contingency, which means that, if two major pieces of the grid go down, it still has to stay up. So we build these things all over the place called peaker plants. And we spend hundreds of millions of dollars on them. And their goal is just to turn on 10 to 12 times a year when there's an emergency on the grid. We spend a lot of money on these things, and you can replace them with the 4-hour batteries, the Tesla Powerwalls that you put on your wall today, and you replace them all over the country. So there are a lot of pathways right now with old infrastructure retiring, with renewable mandates retiring things early, and with, quite honestly, the capability of these resources, like the technology like batteries, as well as the control technology, like what Swell is doing to aggregate them together, that are coming in at the right time, I think, to start really pushing the boundary of how renewable can make our grid.
Where does the EVs fit into this equation, and the I guess V to G and grid services, that ratio?
Yeah, so a grid service can be provided by anything that can help change the way that we use energy. Either by directly creating and providing energy, like a solar system, or changing the way we use it. So a smart thermostat can pre-cool your home for a couple of hours, and then turn to a lower setting when there's high demand on the grid. There are smart water heaters that can preheat your water at a time of day when we have extra energy, and make sure that it doesn't get turned on, in the evening when solar is ramping down. Same thing with EVs. EVs are huge batteries, right? They're the same thing as a Tesla Powerwall in some cases. So
2.5, I think, on some of those cars, right?
Yeah. So all you have to do is change the time of day when you're charging, or match the charging to when it's needed, or you can actually take energy out of that battery and use it to help balance the grid the same way you would with a Powerwall or another resource like that.
Yeah.
So you can use all of, and we can, and we do need to use all of these things together. Everything can be a pool pump, anything that you can intelligently control that affects the usage of energy can be used to manage 100% renewable grid.
That's where, I mean, it's the whole ecosystem right now that I'm seeing these new houses, and like I've seen huge houses be really efficient and little houses be horribly inefficient, and you're just like, where's my bill going? And then we come in for the solar and we do a design, and one part of the pitch is one part of the education to the customer is like, there's a human element that has to, and then that almost goes tandem with what you guys are doing with the grid services. Is there's the human element that has to modify the energy usage, right? And the time of use of energy, and realizing the bell curve of production, and when the battery is stored, and like, hey, it's high noon, your battery is at almost peak, it's 1-2 o'clock in the afternoon, and now's the time to actually run that pool pump on high, and basically time of use of it. I guess the other part of that equation, like that surplus of energy and how to manage that surplus. So now what happens when the battery is full and it's 2 o'clock, and you don't want to export with grid supply to a wholesale rate, and you have to pull it back at a retail rate. I think that's the next evolution for here in Hawaii, is how to manage that surplus, and that you guys are kind of figuring out how to do that. Am I correct with that?
Yeah. So, and I think part of the answer there is that just because there's energy that's not needed on your home doesn't mean it's not needed by the grid as a whole.
Yeah.
And so part of the power, part of the, the essence of putting an entire community of energy producers together is that there may always be a need for that energy that you can get paid for more than, the wholesale rate of just randomly filling up your battery and using it when you can. And I think that's the premise, is that there's kind of always a place for the energy to go that's valuable.
Is there going to be, is there going to be like a setting with you guys? Like, I'm going on vacation for a month, and make sure you guys know that the usage is going to be really low at the home.
So right now, that wouldn't actually make much of a difference, because we can only grid services in this program, we only use the grid services about a little over 100 times a year.
Oh yeah, it's when the grid needs it. I get it. Yes.
Yeah, depending on the island, and it gets cold. So it's like, we're like the Ghostbusters for energy. It's like only when when the phone rings does it out to meet that.
Interesting. Okay. Where do you see energy? This is more of a philosophical question with this. Is like, where do you see energy? What do you see energy's role, and where does it see for civilization, and where does it have to, like, where do we have to make the change to flourish? And really, like, it's everything's going down the path of electrify everything. And how do we, what's the next evolution of this, I guess, and how can we improve upon this?
Yeah, I mean, it's in general, from everything that I've read, and I try to at least stay abreast and well versed on this stuff, we need a complete societal transformation of our relationship to energy. To me, that's one of the coolest things about solar panels by themselves, is not only that it's a relatively straightforward technology. The sun hits it and it converts the heat into energy, et cetera. But it changes your relationship to the sun. It changes your relationship to weather. It changes your relationship to the seasons. It's fun to like be reminded of things you learned in middle school, that like summer and winter is actually the earth tilting toward and away from the sun. And the angle that the sun hits the earth determines how much energy you can produce from stuff that's on your roof at a different angle.
I just had to explain that to a client just now, that we just turned the system on in the winter time. And he's like, where's the number? I'm like, please, just it's an annual production average, and we're hitting the mark, and I promise you're going to make more in the summertime.
But I mean, we don't think about where our energy comes from, because we're so used to a world of infinite, if not abundant, energy, where our water is heated by natural gas in some cases. We go to a pump and fill up our car. Like, every conceivable place where we need energy as a civilization, we need to convert it to electricity, and then we need to make that electricity from renewable resources. So it has to be a complete all-out transition away from every way that we use energy today, not from renewables, to one in which we electrify everything, because we can, the amount of energy we get just from the sun is enough to power our civilization if we reorganize society to do so. And it's just going to take a tremendous amount of work. So for grid services and things like this, it's like your home becomes an asset to the entire community that you live in. Every device that you install that uses energy somehow can be adjusted so that it uses it for the greatest good, while still providing you the same level of comfort, or maybe sometimes even better levels of comfort than you had with the kind of dumb technologies, which was just pipe a bunch of gas into your house and burn it to get something you need. So that's really the way I look at it. Like, there's no wrong answer. There's no wrong solution, because we need everything. There is just a full court press on every conceivable way that we can be more efficient and convert as much as possible to renewable resources.
Yeah, that you hit it right on the head for me, where you said disconnect, and there's such a disconnect on a lot of different levels, where people don't, especially here in Hawaii, where you don't realize how far something's traveled when you're consuming it, once it gets to you, whether it's food or energy or gas for your car or the meat. Like, if you're not, you just rip a piece of plastic open and slap a steak down, but you don't realize how far that thing has come for. So I'll tell you a funny story that really made me connect early on in my solar journey. I love the garden, and I had all my little start trays one season when we were starting. And this is back when before Aurora, and we had to crawl on roofs and get the azimuth out and do the calculations to really measure the roofs for power production, Stone Age solar installations. And I went out to my garden. I had this tray of starts, and they're on their, I would say there's 6 leaves essentially. You always two, and then the next 2 were the big fan leaves. And this tray had about 100 starts. It was some greens. I hadn't moved it in a couple of days, and it was in the afternoon, and these every leaf on that tray was facing due south at 15 degrees. And like the light bulb in my head, I'm like, oh my God, these guys they're so tuned in, and they probably were on trackers if you actually did a little time lapse, and they were definitely present to what the sun was doing and maximizing every bit of it. So that was just it was really rad. Once I like observed that connection, it was pretty cool. So it's just being connected and being present and not disconnected. So
yeah, it's just, the power of the sun is really compelling in a lot of ways. Just, you can feel the warmth, and that's coming from, it's just nuclear explosions billions and billions of miles away, and that it's going off infinitely, at least by our time scale.
Yeah, before we get in the one last question before we really get into the fun philosophical stuff at the end of this, do you believe Hawaii could be 100% renewable, or what's the ratio, or what should be the real ratio of our balance of utility scale to rooftop distributed, and basically taking out all those old I mean, here in Maui, we're diesel generated. It's sad. And I know that the other island, it's an old battleship engine. So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot that I find really compelling and exciting about the program that we're doing, Hawaii in general, and the relationship even from every system on a customer level to the next level to the next level. It's like a fractal of what can go right.
yeah.
Every single person in Hawaii can connect their home to this, and every time another home gets connected, it is more powerful than the one before it in terms of manifesting real change. So the more homes we have connected, the more capacity we have, the more capabilities that we develop. And there's programs coming after the home battery rewards program that we're doing, and after that one, and after that one. It really does, given the size of Hawaii and how popular this technology is, Hawaii could be the first domino. Like, Hawaii absolutely could, should, and probably will be the first state to go 100% renewable. And just what we've seen from systematic change in the United States, like, we're such a divided nation, polarized nation in so many ways, that you need to have local success that's large enough to be important first. You need those like beacons to show people what's possible, because this is about political will and belief more than it is about possibility or impossibility. It is absolutely possible to transition an entire civilization over to a technology that has existed for 30 years. Like, that's not crazy on its head at all. It just seems impossible because we can't agree on things. And in Hawaii, there's just, people can feel the transitions, the effects of climate change in their life every day. They can see it. Everybody is within 50 miles of it happening, no matter where they live. And I think that means a lot. And I think that is going to be the impetus that drives people to make these decisions, where if you're living in a place where you don't really see the effects every day, you might not take it up as quickly. So I really do feel like the policy environment is good. The people really resonate with what we're doing. And it's not an insurmountable challenge given the size and the amount of energy used in the entire state to be able to do so.
Yeah, I think 30% of the homes now have rooftop solar. I'm not exactly sure the penetration. I know we hit the marks every time the utility would put a mark down for how much grid penetration we'd have. We hit it way ahead of schedule, and we jumped ahead of it. And they have to get on board with, this is what the people want. And I know That's where what you guys have done is basically armbarred them and capitulated that we have to have these programs in place. We need virtual power plants. It has to be distributed. It's got to be community based. It can't just be all from them. And we're a community at the end of the day, and we're as a community by definition, we work together, and that's where what you guys are providing is pretty awesome. So thank you. Hats off to that one.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen without everybody in the community being a part of it. And one of the words that we haven't struck on yet that's pretty important too is resilience.
Yes.
Right. This is when you distribute something, it's like the old metaphor of taking a bunch of very thin twigs and putting them together, and you can't break the bunch. Like that's what a distributed energy system is, right? It's a lot of different places that is producing energy, all reinforcing one another locally. So if you talk about, climate change is an obvious one, right? A big storm knocks out a power plant, 1 million people lose power. But if you have a distributed network, it's a lot safer. It's a lot more resilient to that kind of damage. We're also in a world where there could be a drone attack. There could be like anything could happen to a piece of the grid today. And the more distributed your network is, the more resilient it is against really any kind of change or assault to it. So yeah, that redundancy is really helpful. The locality means you're not burning a lot of extra energy transporting it. So yeah, also a huge benefit of programs like this over central planning.
You remind me on a key point that another one we haven't talked on was grid failure. How does you guys have secondary right to the battery, right? It's not the customer always has the first right to the battery. If like the grid goes down and they're home, they need the power.
Oh yeah. So the way that these systems work is they have something, and I'm going to be out of my depth here pretty quickly on the technical terms, but they have what's called an automatic transfer switch.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that your system is always detecting, like, is there energy from the grid? If yes, then we're going to do our normal stuff. If no, if the power goes out, your system says, oh, there's no energy coming from the grid. So I'm going to shut off the grid now, and everything is just getting used for my home. And whether you're in a virtual power plant or the home battery rewards program, or whether it remains the same. As soon as the power goes out, your system is used 100% for backup power for your home until the grid comes back on. So if it's an hour, you use energy from your battery, you keep doing whatever you're doing for an hour. If it's 5 days, then the sun comes up the next day, your solar panels turn back on, charges your battery, and you keep going until the grid comes back up.
Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, it's you guys are more when the grid's on. And that's when you're the strength of what you guys are doing. So
yep,
that makes sense. So when I first met you, maybe we didn't get a proper introduction, but we're in a bunch of group emails. You came to Maui for the film festival that you guys were Swell was a sponsor of, and I heard you speak, and it stopped me in my tracks. So you were as eloquent as I've ever heard a solar nerd that we wear, and that made me dig into it. So I heard you're a prolific writer and a poet. Can you touch on that for a second, and how that? I mean, that's when I was in college, I sucked at writing, and I made sure when I was going through the business school, I always had a creative writing or literature class because I had to learn to communicate. So you're doing an awesome job communicating the message of what you guys are doing at renewable energies and the adoption of renewable energies. Just touch on poetry and communication and literature and writing a little bit, please.
Yeah. So I got my degree, like most people in the energy industry, in creative writing and geophysics.
Hybrid, just kind
of all over the place, and got my master's in international business. So none of that, but I spent a decade traveling around the world, teaching English as a second language, and just falling and being very privileged and lucky, and just falling in love with beautiful places all over the world. It's pretty easy to be inspired by that kind of stuff. And part of what has kept me in this industry, which can be incredibly wonky, full of arcane policy decisions, and for customers, a lot of it is about financial kind of machinations and things like that. But the key to this being successful is being able to tell the story of how we overcome one of the biggest challenges in history, one of the biggest challenges for our species. So I always, and also it coming to terms with climate grief. Like a lot of what I write about, and I sometimes teach literature and poetry on the side as, you know, my night hustle. A lot of terms with how the world is going to change from the world we grew up in, and the world that was predictable and the world that was reliable, and just trying to capture the small moments of beauty that we're struggling uphill to continue to protect for the next generation. So I find constant inspiration in the work that we do, and I think it translates very, very well to any kind of writing you want to do about the subject and the topic.
Beautiful. That's very beautiful. Is there a place we can read some of your beautiful pieces that we can tap into, or?
I don't have a
we got to catch your speech that you put on stage, but like it stopped me in my tracks. I was literally like on my way somewhere in that venue, and I just had to like stop, and I made sure Brad sent me that clip because I know he was recording it. So
I really appreciate it. I had 3 minutes, and I wanted to swing for the fences. 3 minutes is a really difficult time to get a complicated point across. So yeah. I think I had about 2,500 words, and I had to cut it down to about 400. So
that's awesome. So
I'm very glad it resonated and it made a point.
It touched my heart.
And regardless of what we do, I think
storytelling's a big part. You got to communicate. So we're going on 45, and let's get to my core question. And we touched on it in our preliminary conversation with you, and it's it has to do with the law of thermodynamics. And the law of thermodynamics is energy can be neither created nor destroyed. It only can be transferred. It's basically you just pass on that vibration. And there's a bunch of different examples if you pay attention to it from the micro level to the macro level. And we've touched on it a bunch, and I know you're well aware of it. So how or what has been some of the most unique ones that you observed that you find fascinating? And second part of that question is, how can we better tune in or sink in or tap in to that vibration, into that pattern, and slipstream that energy? Because there's this energy flowing everywhere, and it's just getting passed along. So whether it's love or turning on a light.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously at the physics level, it applies really closely to what we're doing, right? You can get the power to run a civilization any number of ways, and that is whether you dig up something from the earth. And ironically, fossil fuels are really solar power, right? It's just solar power that's been captured millions of years ago and crushed beneath, and we're digging it up and burning it instead of just taking it from the sun where it's free.
Yeah.
But the idea that you can just put this piece of technology on your roof, convert energy from the sun, and in a distributed network, in a civilization where we all care enough to do so, you are spreading that energy to your neighbors, to your community, to power their lives, to power their homes, whether, for any purpose whatsoever. And I just always find that really beautiful, right? Like, when a lot of people went into this industry and they started selling solar to, we could only sell it to homeowners. And a lot of times homeowners are a little bit older, and some people would be like 20 years, 25 years. I don't know if I'm going to be around that long. Why should I care? And when you start to see that you can take this technology and convert it into the life of a community, it becomes the tree that you plant under whose shade you will never sit, right? This technology can be used to transformationally change our communities for the better. We can, it's not thermodynamics, but you can take space that was a power plant and turn it into a park. There's any number of things that you are going to be capable of doing. And we need a literal shift in the way human civilization works. The amount of energy, the amount of transition, the amount of change that stems entirely from our belief that we can be and do better.
No.
Is just how we can, how efficiently we convert the sun's rays into electricity.
Well, that was a very beautiful explanation. Thank you for sharing that. That was just you hit it before I even explained it the other day, and you're like, I was like, wait, hold up, we gotta. You hit the key concept. So it's just, I don't know, it's just the energy efficiency, that vibration sharing from one human to another. It's such a universal truth, and now you guys have dropped it into a business model. It's a, I don't know, it makes sense. It's a very, very next logical step, and it's something, it's a universal truth, I guess, right? That what you've dropped into a business model.
And it is, it to me is always exciting. It's one of the things that excites me about coming to this type of work every day, is that we can do all of these things, we can provide all of these services, and at the very end of it, we can also say, and you'll get paid thousands of dollars. Like that, to me, like the joy of my job is figuring out all of the things that we have to say. We tell people that they're, that it is actually a robust business model that provides value across all these different channels and places, and you're going to get paid quite a lot of money to be a part of this change because it's necessary and it's expensive and it's valuable. But yeah, to me, it's really important to just note that we have been engaging in these activities for years now, in some cases decades. We've been putting these solar panels randomly across schools and people's homes and parking garages and things like that. But until you connect them together, until we believe that we are part of a greater change, we're not going to be doing enough good for it to matter. Right. And this is like, it's not like, making sure we throw things in the recycling bin, hugely important, but like, these are, this is infrastructure. We are human and energy infrastructure individually. Our homes are capable of being part of the entire change that we need for society. And it's pretty cool when you start to put those things together.
Yeah, it's a redefinition of our relationship to energy, and what does it mean, and where does it go? So, well, that was awesome, sir. Thank you for your time. I think we hit all the notes that I wanted to touch with you. And anything you wanted to share before we sign off and say aloha?
No, I guess the one thing I'll share is that I don't know if we said it, but the opportunity to do this now and the opportunity to make the most money doing it is on Oahu and Maui and the Big Island. It's going to be thousands of people. We're starting to ramp things up, and there's going to be 3 years of building this one particular fleet, and there'll be other opportunities in the future. But yeah, I'm really genuinely excited to be working with you and your company, to be working, as part of Hawaii's solution, because I think it is going to be kind of the linchpin state. And yeah, you can let people know if they want to reach out directly to me, they can, and I'm happy to hear from them. And yeah, it's been a real pleasure, man. Thank you.
Awesome, man. I can't wait to give you a holler. We're definitely going to do this again and say, hey, we are 100%, bro. Remember when we had that little chat, this little podcast? We're like, can we go 100%? And we're like, we hit it. So thank you for your effort. I'm hammering away what I can and I can do in my little way. And if more people are doing what we're doing, we'll get a critical mass of momentum. So thank you much.
Thanks so much, man.
I'm sorry, I wish I was the CEO, but I am the Director of Grid Services Program Management at Swell Energy, and I will tell you what that means in just a minute. I was just hoping to speak to everyone for just a few minutes about renewable energy and climate change, if that was all right with you. Sounds like some folks are interested. So, it seems to me that we are living in a world that is quickly filling up with the consequences of decisions that were made for us before we were ever born. Filling with plastic oceans, with polluted waters, with darkened skies, from actions taken without our consent. And sometimes it can feel like the doorway to a bright future has already closed. Sometimes it can be so hard to watch all of our leaders come together over and over and leave us with the exact same thought. Maybe next year. Sure. But I'm here to tell you the good news. And the good news is that when you look around tonight, and you look around your homes and your families and your communities, that everything and everyone that we'll ever need to solve this problem are right here. Because when our leaders fail to act, it is essential that every one of us act as leaders. Right now, Swell Energy, Rising Sun Solar, and Revolute Sun are gathering 6,000 homes right here on Maui and on Oahu and on the Big Island, connecting the solar on the top of their roofs with the Tesla Powerwall batteries and a little bit of software to do today what only gigantic fossil fuel generating plants could do yesterday. But we need more of you. We call this the Home Battery Rewards Program. And whether you already have a system installed on your home or you plan on getting one soon, you can start earning like a power plant just for supporting the grid. Thousands of dollars within the first few years. And after this 6,000 homes, we can and we will connect more and more of these communities until every single power plant burning coal, burning oil, burning natural gas can be retired by you. But I can't tell you that programs like this are going to solve everything. The work ahead of us is absolutely enormous. What I will offer you is this: a small ribbon of light coming through that doorway from a brighter future. But that doorway, though it's not closed yet, is closing quickly. Because the tipping point that matters most in the fight against climate change is not a melting glacier, is not a thawing permafrost. It is the tipping point within our own hearts when we decide, I will not wait one more year. I will not wait one more day. I believe the actions that I take matter, and I will act on that belief. And if you are ready to join us, all you have to do is go to our website, swellenergy.com/MauiFilm, or reach out to me or anyone else you see from our companies here tonight. We will solve these problems together. And I can tell you that every one of us will be working to keep our foot in the crack of that door, to keep it open just a little bit, waiting for you to burst through. Because one day soon, we will know that we have done everything we possibly could to preserve all of the beautiful places in this world, just like the one we're sitting in right now. Not just for us, but for everyone that comes after. And so, from everyone at Swell Energy, Rising Sun Solar, and Revolute Sun, I want to say thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for caring, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you.